When I had gotten to the point in the makeup where I actually got the mustache on, that was when everything clicked. Like before that, it was like, it looks a little different, a little weird. I'm not so sure about this. But when I started painting on the mustache, I was just like, okay, this is a look. This looks so good on me. I love this. I have to do more of this now.
So if you ever ask me what my favorite sitcom theme song is, there's really only one answer I'm ever going to give you, and that is Thank You for Being a Friend from the Golden Girls. And it's, I won't go into how brilliant it is, but I think that one of the reasons that it resonates so much for me is because I have always valued friendships over other types of relationships, and there's just something that I think is really magical about having that special friend who eggs you on, pushes you out of your comfort zone, and encourages you to be this bolder, bigger version of yourself. So I, of course, loved hearing all about Norwegian drag king Erik Sjon's first foray into dressing up. Back when he and his friends would go full club kid glam and dance the night away at Oslo's Erskin. This was before he became a drag king or a performer, and it was all just about self-expression, community, and the magic of friendship. We talked in this conversation about the inspiration behind his drag character, what first attracted him to drag in the first place, and that one time when he and his friends accidentally became go-go dancers, as you do. Before we get in, true to form, I completely failed to pick up on the pun in Erik's name. And I'm hoping you did too. And if that is the case, and we both failed to pick up on it, don't worry, he is about to explain it to us at the beginning of this conversation. My name is Kay Anderson, and this is Lost Spaces, the podcast that is, on its surface, all about lost queer spaces and the memories they left behind, but is really about the people who went there and how they were shaped by having access to that space. Why don't we get into it? Okay, so first you need to help me with pronunciations.
Yes. I'm always very interested in how people think my name is pronounced.
Us ignorant English speakers, yeah.
Or if they're able to like replicate it, because like the Norwegian pronunciation would be Erik Sjon.
Oh, thank you for
Erik
not testing
Sjon.
me. I thought you were going to ask me to say
sorry.
what.
I don't know. I didn't want to like be like, oh, how do you think it sounds? And be really judgy about it.
Oh, no, that's exactly my kind of thing, to be judged mercilessly. Okay, so it's Erik Sjon. Sjon?
Yeah. Sjon.
Sjon.
Erik Sjon.
Erik Sjon.
So basically, it's a pun on erection.
Ah.
Because in Norwegian, it's Erik Sjon. So I just split the name. So instead of Erik Sjon, Erik Sjon.
Ah.
So I guess the English version would be if you have erection, Erik.
Yeah.
Sjon.
Erik. Well, it doesn't work in English, does it? Because it's Erik Kitchen.
Or something like that. Erik Sjon.
Oh, Erik Shin, yeah?
Sjon.
Ah. Well, and so is Sean like an actual surname?
I don't think it is, but it sounds like. The thing with Norway is that we have a lot of names, a lot of like small families around, so you meet a lot of people with last names you've never heard of before.
Okay.
Because they come from like very small places. So there's actually a lot of people that I meet that don't get that it's a pun. before either they've heard someone like say it out loud.
Yeah.
Or if they, I don't know, it's taken them a couple of months and then they're like,
Hang on.
they suddenly read it and they're like, wait a minute, it's a pun. Now I get it.
Okay, so then how did you come up with the name? I mean, that's a bit of a dumb question, sorry.
Honestly, I didn't actually come up with the name myself. I decided I wanted to do drag, but I've always been very bad at names. Like for when making my own characters in like D&D or video games or stories, I've always been really bad at naming characters. So I actually asked my Facebook friends like, hey, I want to start doing drag, but I need a name. Anyone have any suggestions? And then my husband's best friend actually was the one who came up with Erik Sjon.
Well, like, yeah. And so then, I shouldn't really ask this.
Oh, you can ask.
Well, are you a fan of Erik Sjon's?
But yes. I am very much.
Yeah, they're kind of cool, aren't they? I like them.
Very fascinating.
Well, all right. So then you've talked about like, I've decided I'm going to go into drag. I need help in deciding a name. Does anyone have any clues? Tell me about the step before that when you were like, yeah, I might go into drag. I might do that.
Well, I've always been like a very big fan of, I don't know, dressing like a man for costumes and stuff like that. The first time I ever did it was in high school. My school had like an unofficial cross-dressing day. Like one of those school activities that the students come up with. I went to a very nerdy and weird and cool school. So it was like an unofficial cross-dressing day. So if you wanted to participate, the boys dressed up as girls, put on like dresses and skirts, put their hair up in ponytails. And the girls, mostly they just put on a pair of baggy sweats, a hoodie, and that was it. And I was like, no, I want to do something more. So I put on like a vest and a proper nice shirt, and I drew on like a beard and dark circles around my eyes, and we actually had like a small catwalk at school, and I won the king title. And I just remember I thought it was really fun to have like a beard and mustache, and I thought it was very cool. So, but I never really knew what a king was back then. This was like in 2013, something like that. I don't know when I discovered exactly like drag kings were a thing or I had heard about them. But for a couple of years, I did consider going into drag because I watched Drag Race. I thought drag was very cool. But when I had tried like queen makeup, I didn't feel any difference. I usually like to wear a lot of makeup and have like really like big colors. I don't like wearing natural makeup. It has to be like heavy eyeliner, very intense colors, a lot of colors, that sort of thing. So when I tried doing queen makeup, I was like, well, this is just how I normally do my makeup, more or less, like maybe a little more, but still. And I thought, well, being a king doesn't sound very fun because men are boring and they don't really have any fun expressions when it comes to fashion. What am I supposed to do?
They do have erections though.
They do. And I think it was when I discovered Landon Cider, I think back in maybe like 2018 or something like that. And I was like, wait a minute. So kings can be this as well. It can actually be a lot. Like, it can be in your face. It can be very expressive. It doesn't have to be like the everyday man. It can be so much more. And I discovered a Norwegian king at a drag show in 2019 whose name is Thor Nado.
Oh, good.
Who actually did metal drag. He was a metalhead, listened to a lot of metal and rock. And he had the aesthetic of a metalhead with long hair, guy liner, leather pants. And it hadn't really occurred to me that I could do my kind of music in drag. I thought that nobody would be into that kind of thing. But when I saw that he did it, I realized that, oh, there's actually a possibility for me to do that as well. And from then on, then I had like the idea I need to start doing drag at some point. I have to do it. And it wasn't until like the pandemic where I was like, okay, I don't have anything else to do, so might as well just start doing it now.
Mm-hmm. But okay, so then the first time that you ever did it, do you remember going through like creating your character, putting on your face, etc., and how that felt?
I remember I felt very like pretty but very handsome. I felt like I looked like what I really like men to look like, so I was like, I look just like my type. And I felt, I don't know, when I had gotten to the point in the makeup where I actually got the mustache on, that was when everything clicked. Like before that, it was like, it looks a little different, a little weird. I'm not so sure about this. But when I started painting on the mustache, I was just like, okay, this is a look. This looks so good on me. I love this. I have to do more of this now.
How interesting. And it's so interesting. Like, so I talked to lots of people about drag and about the first time that they did it and the moment of just being like, oh, yeah, this is like triggered something in me. This has opened something in me. This is like something that I want to keep doing. And it's so interesting to hear your story about trying female presenting drag and being like, yeah, could take or leave this. This is whatever. And then to go on to try male presenting drag and just to be like, bing, 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 bing. This is it. This is what I want to do.
Also for me, I felt like that was a way I could express my queerness, because I felt like there wasn't any way with the way I dressed and the way I looked that I could like visualize to the world around me that I was queer. Without, I don't know, making it obvious, wearing like lots of pride stuff and flags and stuff like that.
Indigo Girls t-shirts, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So this was kind of like when I got into drag, I felt like now I look visibly queer, and that was kind of like a comfort to me.
Why is that a comfort? Why is that important?
I mean, I've known since I was a young teenager or I was into girls. I found out actually later that I was also into boys. I didn't understand that before. So I started out liking girls, then understood I liked boys. And with like the kind of environments that I hung around in, very alternative crowds, very nerdy, it was like a very open queer community. It was very normal to be queer with the people I hung around. And it became like a really important thing a lot of us bonded over together, about being different in many ways, and the struggles of being queer, the fights that we had to do for our rights and all of that. And because I'm now married to a man, and I've been together with him for like 9 years. So obviously we do look like, I'm gonna say regular couple, because we don't look like that. We have piercings and tattoos and the style, so we don't look like a normal couple. But to like anyone who doesn't necessarily talk to me, they're not gonna know that I'm queer. And since that's been like a really important part of me, both to myself and in my environment, it's always felt a little lacking that I couldn't signal to other people that I am that, and I didn't feel like I could signal it in a more obvious way. I mean, for me and a lot of my friends, we kind of just assume anytime we see someone like dressed very alternative, we just assume that they are queer. But that's like, we see each other kind of, but for people outside that community, I don't think that they would look at me and think that. And because that's been like such an important part of me, like an important part of my identity for so long, I felt a lacking there. And it really felt nice being able to express that and feel like I did something explicitly queer, that looked queer, that's experienced as queer.
And so it's more about signaling to others that you are an ally. That's probably the wrong choice of word because that word's been hijacked and used differently. But to signal to different people that you are part of the community rather than for fear of them excluding you from the community.
I mean, I've experienced a lot of ostracization, social ostracization in my life because I've been so different. So that's never really been like a fear for me. That's been like normal. So...
But there's a difference, isn't there? Because, I mean, sorry, I'm just talking over you. When you've experienced that ostracization, is that from heterosexual people and you've been ostracized because of your queerness?
It's mostly been because I've looked a certain way with, the way that I dress, like the darkness of it all. I look like a freak.
Well, actually, can I just ask a question here? Yeah. So this is me and my ignorance about Scandinavian countries, but I was under the impression that metal and like that kind of heavy goth look was actually quite popular. No?
The way we look to the international scene is much more brutal and truthful than what we actually are. I mean, especially in Oslo, I'm going to say this from an Oslo perspective, like the capital. It's not that it's strange to see a man with long hair, band shirts, leather jackets. It's not rare, but it's also not like common. I have a friend who used to dress like really trad goth with like basically white face paints, like the true trads goth style. She used to live in Bergen, our second biggest city, and she would experience almost daily that people would like sneak photographer her with their phones on like public transportation, stuff like that. When she came to Oslo, she didn't experience that as much. It happened sometimes, but she did notice like a big shift in that people were used to it, but in the sense that they've seen it before, but it's not something that they see very often whilst in Bergen. For a lot of people, it seemed like that's the first time they've ever seen someone dressed like that. Pretty much.
And so then going back to this ostracization, you were experiencing that because of the way you dressed, because of the way you looked from your peers at school?
Yes, but also like in the way that I acted and who I was as a person with the interest that I had. I was very bad socially. I had very bad social antennas when I was younger. It's gotten better with age, but there's been like a lot of situations that I've thought back to as an adult. I was like, I didn't understand that they were actually trying to bully me. They were trying to make fun of me, but I just didn't catch that.
Oh, that's quite impressive, though. That's quite good to just like not even picked up on the fact that they're being horrible to you.
Yeah, I mean, for better or for worse. Then and there, I think that saved me from a lot of like, I don't know, bad experiences. I probably would have felt worse, but I still, I wasn't part of any larger groups. I had 2 friends for like middle school, and we were like the only kind of nerdy kids in the entire school. So we like clung to each other. But they weren't like dressing dark like me. They didn't like have those kind of interests as I did. And at that age, I wasn't like necessarily out to anyone. I had felt those feelings myself, but I didn't really dare to share it with anyone else other than like online friends that I had gotten. But when I started high school, as I said, I went to a very special, like nerdy special, I don't know.
Cross-dressing.
A very special school with a very lot of open-minded people. And both when I started there and also started hanging out in there was like a place by the city center called like the emo corner that was like by a nerdy store in like the train station. We would just like hang out, get chased away by the security there now and then if we became too many, but we would just hang there and being exposed to these like very open and accepting environments where other people talked openly, positively about being queer and themselves being queer, made it very normal for me and made me feel very comfortable with being able to share that as well.
But yeah, but which makes the stakes much higher, I think, because going back to the point I was trying to make before, and I don't think I made very elegantly, was that like it's one thing being ostracized by people that you don't feel a part of the group anyway, so like no big loss, who cares? But it's another thing entirely to feel ostracized from people who you think are your community or should be your community. And that's kind of why I was bringing that up when you were talking about feeling the desire, the want to be more outwardly queer appearing.
I do wonder like how much of that is myself projecting and how much is like an actual sentiment. But you know, you kind of experience people talking about especially women being quote unquote bi, or I don't really label myself either this or that. I don't feel like either pansexual or bisexual applies to me, because I don't feel that I'm like not necessarily confined, but I feel like queer is just like a very nice and easy way to say that, well, I like women, I like men, I like more. I don't just like men. But you know, there was a sentiment in certain environments here and there that you hear about people not taking queer women seriously, and bi erasure, like unless you're like currently with a woman and you're going to be with a woman and you're with lots of women and that's the only thing you are, then they don't believe your queerness. And again, since I've been with a man for so long, I've felt this like internal need to try to prove myself that I belong, I'm also queer, because I can't prove it with my husband. It's like, it's very, you know, hetero presenting. So it's been nice to have this thing where I kind of feel like I get to prove that I belong. But again, I don't know how much of that is me just projecting an insecurity about myself and how much is actually real.
But then, so how many times do you have conversations when your husband's like, oh, can I come out with you tonight? And you're like, no, I don't want anyone to see you.
I mean, never. If he wanted to come, I would obviously bring him with me.
But there is that weird pressure, isn't there, of like, let's not be affectionate here because people might like see us. Yeah,
that's the thing. If I were to bring him to like the queer club Erskin, I would feel that we couldn't be too PDA about it, because that and many queer spaces have experienced what we call homo safari, which is basically, you know, the term for straight people coming into queer spaces and just being like, wow, look at those queers, they're gay, and you know, you don't want to like entrench on the safe space that people have and make them I don't know, take the space that they hold, you know?
Yeah. But does that change when you're in drag, though? Because that's two men kissing.
Oh, I'm not my husband's type when I'm in drag.
Oh, really?
No, he does. He thinks I look like a douchebag, and he's more into like hairless. I'm not gonna say twinks.
Oh, wow.
But he's into twinks, he doesn't like he's bearded men. He doesn't like bearded men, and I'm only a bearded man. So he's like, you look like a douchebag. And I'm like, no, I look handsome. I look very handsome.
Okay, all right. So you just brought up the queer space that we are going to talk about today, which is, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce this either, Elsker?
Elskir.
Okay, Elskir. Which I believe is where you actually started out in drag.
Because here's the thing, I used to go to the former place that Erskin used to be with a couple of friends of mine with more like club kids looks. Yeah. And I never felt that as drag for me, because I felt that was just an expression of my usual creative sides, basically like what I would like to do with my makeup, but so much more than what I would do in a regular day. So we would go there and have like themes for like, what are we going to do our clothing and our makeup inspired by, it would be like flowers or elements like fire, metal, or like the Asian elements, lightning. It could be animals, or like, I think one time we just did straight up glitter as our thing.
Oh, that's horrible. Oh.
Yeah, that was pretty bad to get off. When I got home after that night, I was just going to sit down and have a breather, and then I fell asleep with a full face of makeup and glitter, and it was everywhere in my bed. It was awful. But I didn't actually have like my drag debut at Erskin, because after the pandemic they moved places.
Okay.
They weren't in the same place as before, and so they don't have as many like drag queen or drag shows. But I have performed at Erskin a couple of times at least, so they still have it, but it's kind of for a select few who are in already with the crowds, who like have connections and can have their shows there.
Okay, well, so then let's dig in a bit more to this club kiddie dressing up type thing. As someone who is very low effort, and you know, you're lucky if I shave before I go out, what's appealing about dressing up to you?
I mean, for my sake, I've always liked doing a lot with the way I dress. The way I dress is how I communicate to other people who I am as a person. So I really like being able to wear more like out, not necessarily very out there, but a little like different type of clothing. And it's the same with the makeup that I like to do. I like to do a lot to just communicate to people what they probably think I am, and being able to do that to like a whole nother level, it just feels like the higher level of being able to express myself. I'm not confident enough to dress like that and go all the way out there and be a total freak in my everyday life, but it was very nice to be able to know that I could do that, go to Erskin, and it would be seen as fun, cool, normal even to do. I wouldn't get like weird looks from it. You know, you felt safe to be able to do and dress how you want. And I like the extravagance. I like doing more. I like having like a concept behind what I look like. And I don't know, I want to feel like the coolest person in the room. I want to be cooler than the others and more different, because I've always felt different, and that was one of the things that got me through, I don't know, middle school, was taking pride in being different.
Like just going all in on being different.
And be like, none of you could ever do this, and you will never be this cool.
I'm like regressing into my memories now and thinking about all the times where I have tried to dress up and have tried to be like this hyper version of myself. I think the problem is I'm always really disappointed in whatever the final product of the costume is. And so I feel like an idiot rather than feeling like super enthusiastic and brave and like strident. So the follow-up question for me is, how much effort do you put into putting a costume together?
I mean, for us, we would usually like base ourselves on what we had in our closets already, and then make up for it with a lot of accessories and makeup. So we would make sure to agree on picking some theme that we would be able to do more easily, that we wouldn't have to like find a lot of new clothes for, and we would put most of like the effort on the makeup itself. When we chose animals, for example, luckily I had like a dress with a lot of snakes on it. They were twirling around like satanic crosses and stuff like that, but there were still a lot of snakes. And so that was kind of like the clothes that would fit, and then the makeup itself would be more like green, scaly lenses, have my hair slicked back in that sort of way. So, because we were both very like makeup interested people, because it was mainly me and a friend called Tindran, and him and me would usually do this a lot, and then sometimes we would have like a third friend who would join us, and he didn't have any experience in makeup at all, so we would help him and do his makeup. And we would try to meet like kind of early, as soon as we could, to get ready together and have good enough time. I don't know, I think maybe like we would set off 5 hours together, but that's just to be sure that we had good time to like do everything and also have a drink while we were doing it, having a good time, and not just like sit there and only focus on
be
the
like
makeup.
panicking.
Yes, exactly.
But okay, and so like I know I seem as though I've been poo-pooing the idea of dressing up and making an effort. So sorry if that's come across.
No.
The thing that I do think is really magical, and I'm glad that we've got to this part of the conversation, is doing this alongside friends and having it as like your special thing that you do together. Because I think so much of nightlife, community, being free to express yourself is about that sense of belonging. And that helps take away some of those fears that you would otherwise have. So I want to learn more about this friendship and how it first blossomed, how you first were like, yeah, cool, let's dress up and let's do a theme and let's see what happens.
Honestly, I don't know if I can actually remember how it started. I think maybe it started because he mainly had moved to Oslo, and we were like, oh, we have to hang out. Because I knew him from like a summer camp that we would go to when we were younger that was like focused on nerd activities. So like role-playing games, LARPing, video games, anything you can put under like the nerd umbrella term. And he was very interested in like special effects makeup and LARPing and costuming, and I always admired him so much for that, because he always had like really cool and intricate costumes when we were LARPing. And so when he moved to Oslo and we started catching up and stuff like that, I think actually that he was in, if I remember correctly, he was in like a dance troupe that's they were called basically Glitter Pussies. Is the translation.
But say it in Norwegian just so I can practice.
Glitterfitter.
Glitterfitter. Glitterfitter. Oh, okay, right, cool, go. Carry on the story.
Yeah, and he was going to be like a go-go dancer at a Pride's event. And when I saw him dressed up like that, he had like, again, very cool, intricate costuming. And I said like, oh, I really want to do that. I really want to be able to dress up like that and do something like that. And I guess somehow we found out that let's just do it. You don't have to get booked to be like a dancer on anything. Let's just ourselves dress up, have fun, and then go out. Go to Erskin and dance all night and just have a good time.
And do you remember the first time that you did that you got all dressed up and went to Erskin?
I mean, I remember parts of the night.
Well, okay. Well, so do you remember the getting ready and the anticipation of going?
I do. We had decided to be kind of flower demons.
Okay.
So we both had like horns that we had put flowers on, and we had glued like flower petals along our face, done a little more like that sort of color to our makeup, drag that out. And I remember being so happy to do this with someone, because I had myself a lot of times just sat at home and done fun makeup just because I felt like it. It's like when you just want to sit and draw a little bit. I just wanted to do something fun with my makeup. And it was so fun to have someone to do it with, and we got to draw inspiration from each other and be like, oh, I was thinking of doing this, and I'm like, oh, that was very fun. I think I'm going to try to do something similar as well. And when we got to Erskin, I just remember feeling, I don't know, so free, and I didn't have to worry about anything. I didn't have to worry about, you know, annoying drunk regular people being like, oh, why are you dressed like that? What's going on? It's not Halloween. And it was just so nice. It felt like we were just a natural part of it, kind of. Even if we were the only ones who looked like that.
But and is that because of the bar itself, or just because you were in a queer space?
I mean, I would just think it was both. Because that bar itself was kind of, it was normal to be dressed in drag and be there without having to be there for a gig or a show. So it was like normalized to a certain degree. It's not like most people who went there would be dressed up like that, but it wasn't like a weird occurrence to see it. So nobody like, we're like, oh, we have to take a picture of it.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of level of, oh yeah, this happens, or people dress like that sometimes, I guess.
And so how long did this go on? How long did you dress up in this way and go to Erskin?
Honestly, I don't think that it lasted. We didn't go out like every week or even every month, because we were both students. We didn't have that much money. And I don't know if you know this, but alcohol and also everything else in Norway is very expensive. So we didn't do like very, very often. But we did do it for a year or two maybe. But then I moved like out of the city center, way further away, because I used to live like 10 minutes away from like the city center. So it was like very easy for us to just meet at my place, do our makeup, and then go in to the town. And then I moved, and it's well, it became a little
awkward,
more of a hassle
to
do. And then the pandemic came, so that kind of put a stop to a lot of things.
Bloody pandemic.
Yeah, unfortunately. And that's you know, when I started doing drag instead, and that kind of took the place in some ways for the club kids dressing up escapades.
Yeah. Well, and so thinking about that time when you were doing the club kids and you were going out and it was just about being fabulous rather than performing, do you think that led you to drag? Or do you think it would have happened anyway?
Honestly, I'm not really sure. I do believe, and I do think that I probably would have started drag anyways, because okay, on one hand, I think that I would have started drag anyways because I did have the wish and need to perform. And I did like, I had experience, quote unquote, drawing on a beard and a mustache a couple of times before that. But it could be that I wouldn't have felt as comfortable like taking the leap to actually doing drag in the same way, because with that I had experienced the dressing differently, going out, being seen by people. I remember at least one time, me and when we were my friend and the other friend, like we were 3 people, we kind of accidentally became go-go dancers at the club.
As you do, yeah.
Basically what happened is that in one of the, because it was like 3 stories of a club with different things happening in different rooms and different vibes, and one of them is like the room with the stage that used to be like drag shows. And when there weren't shows there, people could stand on stage and just dance normally, and people would do that. And we were like, yeah, let's go up there and dance together. And then slowly but surely people would disappear from the stage, and it was only us three, and then you had like this crowds of people because the dance floor was packed, but nobody was on stage anymore. And we were like, okay, I guess we're dancing towards the crowd now and not towards ourselves. I guess we're tonight's entertainment. Don't know how that happened, but it's
Did anyone
happened
tip
at least.
you?
No, that's not a that's not a part of our culture here. So we just loved our 15 minutes of fame. It did feel very nice being able to be on stage like that, even if it wasn't like meant to be, and nobody like introduced us or anything like that, so nobody knew who we were, but it felt nice.
I do think that there is that. I think I've said it before in this conversation even, but just that the magic of that friendship and how that gets you into those situations sometimes that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten into on your own, and just the power of that. I think it's incredible when you have those.
It really is like inspiring each other.
So you may not have, but you probably were inspired by this friendship and by going to Erskin together in your club kid getup. Now, the thing about Erskin is that it still is a bar, it still exists, but it no longer exists in the same physical space that it did at that time that you went there. And this brings me to like a big existential question that's maybe not answerable, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Well, how important do you think the physical space is in defining the essence of a queer space?
I think like a lot of history is connected to the old place that doesn't feel the same reminiscing about when you go to the new place, because it is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
I think me and a lot of other people will say that we liked the older place better in different kinds of ways. In some ways, I felt like the old place was, I don't know, it felt more handmade in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you could feel like this place has been here for a while. It has a history. It has like been built up to be what it is, both like physically but historically also. And the newer place feels in a lot of ways more professionally done. It feels too clean, kind of.
Yeah.
In certain ways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, not good.
I mean, it's still like a nice place, but there are like some parts of it where I'm like, this feels a little too modern. It feels too professional. People have done this. That being said, I don't know how they did the whole refurbishing and everything. Could be that they've done a lot of it by hand itself. But, you know, I mean, it's still a very wonderful community. I do think that the floor planning is a little weird in some ways, just because you used to have everything more like on top of each other, and now it's more like
Spread
pushed
out.
apart on top of each other.
So all of that is to say that, yes, you think the space matters.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. But again, I might be too critical about this because I remember it's so fondly and had spent more time in the old place than I have in the new.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, like you said, that nostalgia is such a wicked drug. That's not the word you used. But it's so intoxicating, right? And nothing is ever as good as what your mind conjures up the past to be.
It can never be the same. It can never like hold a candle to its... But also because I remember all the good parts. I remember all things with joy and fondness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to compare to that.
But so then when you go into the new space, how does it feel?
I don't know, it feels... some of the decor feels a little kitschy in the bad way, kind of.
Okay, but that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, how does it like feel here? Like, do you feel welcome? Do you feel like you're accepted there? Or does it feel different to how it did in the other space?
it feels different in the way that I know more people there now. But on the other hand, I do feel less familiar there. I don't feel the same sense of belonging when I go there as I used to. But I still feel like, in a certain way, that I am welcome. It's still like a place for me, a place for us, and people are very nice there. But I don't know, something has changed. I don't feel the same belonging to it as I used to. Even though in theory it's the same place, it's run by the same people, it's the same people that work there, and that, as every other place, has like, you know, new crowds coming in as they get old enough to come in, etc. But it feels, I don't know, something is different. It doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, and that's what is so difficult about the comparison piece, and it's probably not fair for me to even be asking you this, because let's say that they had stayed in the same space, but you as a human being had gotten older and your interests had changed and your focus was less on going out and socializing and putting on wild makeup. That same space could still feel less welcoming because you feel less entrenched in the community. So it might not even be about location, geography, decor. It might be about you.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you do feel a different sense of belonging when you go out to a place more regularly.
And when you're young and you're like desperate for belonging, you feel that belonging.
Very much that. You get very attached to it when you're younger and you go there. And then when you get older, you learn to not be as attached anymore. I used to suffer a lot of like fear of missing out. And felt like I had to go to everything that I could, and I had to go out whenever I had the opportunity. And I don't do that as much anymore. So I'm in that way a little more free, because I don't feel like I have to be a part of everything. But that also means that I don't form the same bonds and connection and grasp onto the place like I used to.
Yeah, and it's hard to know which is better. Maybe neither is better. Maybe it's wrong for me to compare the two. But I totally get what you're saying in that when you're a little older and you get a little more independent and you feel a little less beholden to the groups of friends that you have or the spaces that you're used to going to, it means that you are not worried about upsetting things. You're not worried about doing things your own way. But it also means that you're compromising on that sense of, belonging, of being part of something bigger than yourself. And it's so much easier to feel like isolated and disconnected as a result.
Yeah, now I feel like my belonging in the community is much more to the people. But that's also, I think, because I have made my space in the drag community. Norway is such a small country, which means that in a way, you know every drag artist.
Yeah.
There aren't that many that you can't keep paying attention to all the new ones. You know everyone, or at least I know everyone. I know about everyone. I keep my eyes open to when new artists show up. And if they are on shows in Norway, we obviously talk, we meet each other, and you do get like this, space of belonging to those people and all those people. And that because drag shows, especially in Oslo, are at a lot of different locations, it also means that you don't get the same, like, we go wherever there is a show when we're wanted.
Okay, so if we go back to Elskir, did I say that? What? Right? Yeah. If we go back to Elskir and we think about your like first times there, going in club kid makeup and being a really exaggerated version of yourself and dancing all night and feeling free. What do you think that taught you about yourself?
I think that was a way for me to embrace and express more of my creative sides. and also learning to do things that will get the attention of others that aren't necessarily positive. Like, people will probably look at you and think you're weird, but like, despite that, knowing to myself that I like what I'm doing and I'm doing this for me and for my sake and not for like the admiration of others. Some people are just not gonna get it. Like, even at Erskin, which is a very friendly community in general, there will be people who will think we're doing too much, we're being too much, we're being too over the top and out there and trying to be artistic and special, but still doing it and ignoring those kind of voices in my head. I did feel like I went out of my comfort zone with doing those things out in the open, instead of just, you know, sitting at home doing my own makeup by myself and not doing anything with it, not going anywhere, not showing anyone. It was nice to kind of step out and go into more of that role of kind of being an artist, I guess.
Kind of being an artist?
Well, I mean, I technically, but I didn't feel like that was what I was doing or what I was being. I just felt, you know, like a little weirdo.
But you feel like an artist now, right?
I do very much.
Okay, good.
Are you an artist? Maybe you are an artist. I think I am. I should have said that more convincingly. I am an artist. Anyway, that's us for this week. Thank you so much again for joining us. Before I let you go, if you want to find out more about Erik, then do follow him on Instagram. It is at king.eriksjon, and that's ERIKSJON. You can also find me on TikTok and Instagram as Lost Spaces Pod. And I think that's it. How about we meet back here next week, same time, same place? Cool, brilliant. Until then, have a good week.